What's more important, the journey or the destination? Actually, it's the company. Journey to Well, the podcast, was birthed with the intention to cultivate relationships. You can expect a plethora of conversations on nervous system regulation, breathwork, human design and astrology, cycle alignment, energy and spirituality, and honestly, so much more. But the heart of this community is to witness the journey back home to ourselves, rediscovering our innate power within. I couldn't be more honored to take this journey with you. Be well, my friend, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast, Journey to Well. Today is fun because we're talking about architecture and the home, and I don't think I've ever talked about this on a podcast before, but one of the reasons that really intrigued me to have a conversation with Taylor is it's not just let me build you a home. So I'm going to let Taylor introduce himself, but he is a architect of conscious home design. So that might give you a little insight of what we might be talking about today. But Taylor, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Thank you for your time. And if you can give a little intro, who is Taylor? What brought you to where you are today? And then, of course, we need to talk about what makes you different from the average architect.
Sure. Hi, Hannah. Thanks for having me on the show, welcoming me in. I really appreciate it. I'm so passionate about this, the mind-body environment connection. And it's so, everyone knows about the mind-body connection,
Yeah.
but the mind-body environment connection is just as real, but it's not as well understood. And so this is really my niche and my area is helping people connect their environment to their best life.
Mm.
And so it's very relevant, even if people are never going to hire an architect, just if you're just doing the best you can with the walls you have, there's some things that actually the big data says really move the needle in terms of our personal satisfaction and even our life expectancy. And so
Wow.
we can, even if you're renting an apartment, there's some little shifts you can do to actually put your home to work in your favor beyond just being, beautiful shelter.
Mm.
And so that's really my passion point. And I'm just so happy to tell anyone about it because I know how impactful it is in people's lives. So I hope everyone listening today will just get one or two takeaways that will sharpen their lens, focus the way they see things. And, because we spend half of our lives in our home.
Mm-hmm.
And if for those of us who are working from home or staying at home to raise families, like we're spending 90% of our time
Yeah.
in our home. And so, the environment, whether we're aware of it or not, it's shaping our lives. And so to the degree that you can be intentional about it and shape your space, you can shape your future and shape your destiny. And so that's the beautiful promise of architecture beyond just style and, space, square footage and stuff, And so I think that doesn't, this message doesn't read so well on Pinterest, and so what we see in the scroll feeds is like these, wow, scroll stopper moments. It's like, but most people don't live in houses like that. And
Absolutely.
and just because it's beautiful doesn't necessarily mean it's functional, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to actually support your daily rhythms and flows. And so, whatever, conscious home design is about, whether it's a cottage or a castle, even if a tiny footprint, any style, any size, any location in the world, it's about making the space work for you. So
Mm.
yeah, that's what conscious home design is. I think people oftentimes will think conscious home design, that sounds interesting, but what does it actually mean? Is that some sort of alternative construction? Is that eco-friendly? Is that energy efficient? What is that? Is it feng shui? And it's really not any of those things. It's just my own um, methodology that I've developed over 20 years of practice in the industry and also my own sort of personal interest. Just like attorneys or doctors, architects specialize. And so I have really, as a person who wants to live wants to feel like I'm living in tune and in harmony with the flow of life. Um, I, practice, some self-awareness and mindfulness and meditation and, personal development activities that I feel like are enriching my life and expanding my horizons, and
Mm.
broadening me as a person. And so I bring that, personal desire and interest into my practice. And so for other people who are also, keying into those things, say, yeah, I like to live, in tune. I like to live, expanded. I like to live on purpose, in harmony with my, um, you know, inner life and my calling and whatever I'm, here to make the most of my time on earth. Then conscious home design is a really great message. It's very integrated. It
Mm.
truly is the difference between house and home.
Oh, I love that. So
Yeah.
what changed in your life from before you implemented this methodology into your home? What
hmm
differences do you notice? How do you feel that you're living in more alignment, or maybe specific changes that you made that really help you feel like this is really me, this is really working for me, this is what wasn't working that was so frustrating, and now it really feels more in flow.
Leave it to Hannah to get to the core of it. You
Why
know,
should
I
people do this?
I have never shared this exact origin story before, but
Yay.
upon your, the way you framed the question, it's pulling it out of me. And so
Love
so
it.
here we go. Um, I grew up, with not much money, kind of poor. And being multi sort of talented or multi interested, have interested in many different things, having a lot of different, like I feel like some people just have this calling and that's their thing and they just boom, straight and narrow and they're right out of the gate and they just hit the finish line and they just crush it, in their
Mm.
thing. But some of us, like, we have many things that we're interested in, many hobbies, many talents, many interests, and so you know, I certainly have specialized in architecture and I'm really mastering that, but I also have many other things that I have skill at and interested in and talent for. And it's kind of like a buffet life. And so not having the resources necessarily to pursue all of my interests and passions and talents. I felt that keenly, right? And as we moved through life, I never lived in one home growing up for more than 2 years. It wasn't until I was in college that I was in one place for longer than 2 years. And most schools and homes I went to only for a year or two. And so I had a lot of opportunity to experience different configurations and what that felt like, and what doors of possibility opened and which ones closed, depending on the architecture that we were living in. So experientially, I got to, I was a guinea pig on myself in a sense. And so I really found, so okay, so let's bring this away from me. Let's bring this out into the world.
Mm.
If you think about the most famous painting on Earth, take a guess.
The
What
Mona
what comes to
Lisa?
mind for you? The Mona Lisa, exactly.
I'm
That's
like,
right.
what is the most famous painting? That's what comes to
That's
mind.
yeah, I think 9 out of 10 people say the Mona Lisa.
Okay.
And it's 500 years old. Pretty much everyone has heard about it by now. Everyone on Earth has heard about it. Leonardo da Vinci started painting it in the early 1500s. But what's interesting about this painting is it took him more than 10 years to complete it. Yeah. It wasn't like he set it up and was like, okay, and did it, in an afternoon. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was like he had to work on this and maybe he was called away to other projects for work, or maybe he had, moments of inspiration and he would get back to it. But when when I learned about that many years ago, I said that's the truth of architecture. It is that without the ability to control our environment, we don't have the capacity to do the things that we're good at or that we love, unless mountain climbing or something, But like
Mhm.
if all of architecture is really responsible for all of our major sort of cultural achievements, whether it's art, whether it's science or technology or medicine, all these things are possible because we were able to build a place for us to do those things. Because if think about it, if we didn't have buildings, if we didn't have architecture, and everyone just lived, in the warm, sort of equatorial belt around the planet, where you don't need clothing, you don't need much, you don't need much shelter. Well, you still wouldn't be able to accomplish much more than would take, sort of a sunny afternoon. Because as soon as the weather came, or night came and wild animals came and stuff, it'd mess everything up, And so the ability to control our space allows us to build on yesterday's achievements. And so if you want to become accomplished at anything, whether it's just for yourself or to share with others in the world, it still requires the dedication of space for you
Mm.
to do that activity. You could say, hey, I want to have a healthy, nutritious diet. I want to eat three organic, nutrient dense meals every single day. But if you're living in a college dorm room and all you have is a mini fridge and a microwave, that's practically impossible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the environment isn't supporting your best intention and your goal and the habits you're trying to create for yourself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I
So
will use an example of my life because I resonated
bring
with
it
you
in. Yeah.
saying growing up, I had my parents got divorced, so I went back and forth between two houses, but it wasn't
Uh-huh.
until about, oh gosh, 5 years ago, maybe now, 6 years ago, I think 5 years ago, I moved. I've lived in like six different cities in like 3 years, and I lived in like, I don't know,
Oh,
four different
yeah.
houses in 3 years.
Okay.
And right
Sure.
now, my apartment has such a tiny kitchen, and I
Uh-huh.
love cooking. And I used to be someone that cooked, full meals and roasted, I had I don't even have an oven
Sure.
right now. I have
Oh
hot plates.
no.
Yeah, it's like very tiny, which is fine. But I do resonate very much with your environment. Like, I still try to eat
Hmm.
healthy, but there's some
Sure.
level of I can't cook these elaborate recipes that I used to cook when I had a full kitchen in my
Right.
current apartment. And that's kind of been my
Sure.
situation for a while now, but that's one of the things that I say. I'm like, I can't, I need a full kitchen. And it does help you
Yeah.
appreciate when you don't have something and then you get back to having it, like a dishwasher, right? Like, you definitely appreciate a dishwasher when you live in a house that doesn't have one. But that example, like that does resonate with me of if you if you don't have the environment, you're more like, or if you do have the environment, right? The opposite too. Like, I definitely find one of the things I do is I dog sit a lot. And so I also get to see a
Okay.
lot of houses. And it's
Uh-huh.
so interesting to see how people live. I'm sure that
Sure.
I'm obsessed with that. Like,
Okay.
it's so
Sure.
interesting. But
Yeah.
the cleaner houses, you feel like you have to be like so clean and organized. And then the houses that have a lot of little knickknacks, like, to me, I'm not a knickknacky person, but it just feels way different. And that's
Hmm.
all the environment.
Hmm.
And it's not, I'm not judging anyone's house by any
Sure.
means,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
it is interesting to see the different environments for sure. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah. So, right. I didn't know that you were having a sticky point by not having an oven to be able to, bake a
No,
turkey or roast a turkey and do things, so when I called on the kitchen as example, I just use it because it's such an easy one to visualize.
it
And
is.
so, and a lot of people have lived through that situation of not having a kitchen,
Right.
and or a full kitchen. So it's relatable. So that's
Mm-hmm.
that's why I brought that up.
Oh, no, for sure.
It's just and so this is the example of when we dedicate. So everyone says, I think it was Seth Godin actually who said 10,000 hours. The 10,000 hour rule is if you study something or practice something for 10,000 hours compared to everyone else on Earth that hasn't done that, have expert level status,
Mhm.
in doing that because 10,000 hours is basically 5 years full time, right? If you think about a 40 hour work week, it's 2,000 hours a year.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so 10,000 hours is five years of full time, into something. And so, that's a pretty good rule of thumb. It's not true for everything under the sun that we do, but it's a rule of thumb. And so we all know this anyway, even without the math and those numbers, we still know practice makes perfect, right? It's still,
Yeah.
we all intuitively know just from our own experience, it takes time and effort to accomplish, or to become, skilled at something. Even if you have talent, you still have to apply it, right? And
Mhm.
practice. But what's missing from that sort of common sense formula is the space, the spatial factor. It also takes space. You could say, "Hey, I want to be a great dancer," but if the ceilings in your place in your apartment are only 7 feet high, then you're not going to be able to practice your jumps and your leaps. Or if the room is this small and there's furniture in the way, you're just not going to be able to dance at all. And so you need the space to support the activity that you want to become good at. And so for me, experientially growing up, with feeling the pinch points of not having opportunities, like in one place it was like, yes, right nearby at school, I was able to take pottery classes and learn to throw clay on the wheel, which was so fun. But then we moved and that wasn't available anymore. In the new place, we had to do something else. And so, I felt these, doors, like I said, doors of opportunity or doors of friction and doors opened or closed based on that. And
Mm.
so that I bring that influence or that experience into best life. Because here's the thing, Hannah, everyone's waving this flag, live your best life, live happily ever after, right? I mean, the internet is full of it, right? All the
Yeah.
coaches, all the architects, all the designers, everyone is saying best life, best life, best life. But what does that actually mean? Like
Yeah.
if you can't define for you personally what best life looks like, then there's no chance of really hitting it, right? You got to be able to, you got to say, you could have, GPS, set up in your phone, but if you don't have a destination to put in coordinates, it's not going to know where to take you, right? And
Love
so you
that.
have to be able to define where am I going? What am I heading? What are the markers of success look like for me?
Mm.
And so the quality of question you ask leads to the quality of results and answers you get. If you ask better questions, you should get better answers. And so for me, my practice is about when I work with someone, when I consult with someone, I want to know what makes them, what's best life mean for them so that we can plan for those, for activity spaces that support that in their home. Because if we don't have it, then, we have to leave it up to chance that they're going to find it outside of the home to get fulfillment in those things. And that may or may not happen based on, circumstances, where we live. It may. So, starting with the home is the best place, if we can possibly do it.
Mm. It's such a cool, like, there's so many parallels too that I'm making because we always say, with a lot of like the somatic work that I do is somatic breath work, for example. I teach breath work classes. I lead breath work journeys. I don't teach anything really, but we all know how to breathe. So, one of the things that I say is like everything that you are looking for, whatever you want, if you want more love, you have that already within you. There's just things that are built up around it that are keeping you from loving deeper and loving more. And it starts from within. And I kind of like this parallel of whatever you want in your life, it's that the home is the place to start. I mean, that's going back to the beginning of the recording. That's where we spend so much of our time. That's really, I know in your book, one of the things that you bring up, which I really appreciated, is how you start your day. Like, where are you starting your day when
Mhm.
you wake up in the morning, your bedroom, and then you go, most people go immediately to the bathroom, whether you're showering or just using the restroom. Then what
Sure.
does your bathroom look like? And what is like the air quality? What comfort items are in there? What's the ambiance of the bathroom? And then of course utility too. Like, do you have all the things you need in your bathroom? So I really love that parallel of starting with with your home, start with the like that's like the inside to me of like who you
Uh-huh.
are. Like that's really where you're not only starting your day, but also ending your day and spending so much of your time. And I'm not sure, obviously you would know this more, but I don't know. I feel like oftentimes, especially if we're kind of in a space for a long time, like how much time are we spending thinking about our home and the energy? Maybe not that it, well, maybe the energy that it has, but like the energy that it's bringing us. That would be an
Hmm.
interesting
Sure.
question.
Yeah, so okay, so there's some interesting, brain science behind that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so we're talking about mind-body connection, mind-body environment connection. And so most people, the way the brain already just thinking, uses up like 20% of their daily calorie burn is just from our brain, right? And
Wow.
so this we hear about this thing called decision fatigue or people get
Yeah.
overwhelmed. It's like that's real. We have limited willpower, limited decision making ability because it's so taxing to navigate what if I do this, this happens, if I do this, this happens, and play out the scenarios in option A, option B. If we had to do that with every little thing in our life every single day, we'd never get anything done, right? That's why the brain does things to create habits and we do things on autopilot. It's about conservation of energy. And so what happens with the home is as soon as it becomes familiar, right? So the brain is targeted, it's hardwired to notice things that are new and different, or
Yeah.
anything that is an outlier, anything that's outside of what is our normal, regular routine experience. And so when we move to a new location, we're going to fire some new neurons. The brain's going to go, "Hey, what's going on? Quick, make a map of everything to make sure that we know what's what, lay of the land." It's a survival instinct, right? Survival response.
Mm.
But once your brain maps out what your home is, you almost don't even see it anymore.
Yeah.
Like there could be that thing on the wall or that knickknack. You mentioned knickknacks before. That knickknack on the shelf there that yeah, it's there, but you might not even have looked at it for 6 months. Just
Yeah.
because it's you just tune it out. It's no longer new, and the brain doesn't register it as relevant or noteworthy anymore.
Mm.
It's no longer it doesn't threaten your survival, and it doesn't, and so it just becomes background.
Mm.
And so this is the interesting part. If your home, if you're noticing it on a daily basis, the chances are it's either a pain point, a frustration, a friction point. Hey, this isn't working. I'm trying to do this thing, and or it's something the opposite. It's something you really love. Oh God, I love this room. I love the way the sun comes in, or I love the view from when I'm sitting here out in through the hallway into the other room that I just there's something about it that you really appreciate, right? And so it's usually one of those more extreme points that you would know. Otherwise, if you don't have extreme points of pain points or love points, in your home, then you probably don't even notice it. It's probably just functional utility space and you're just busy doing your own business in your own thoughts. But that doesn't mean that it's not subtly influencing you because your mind isn't noticing it. It's just shaping you. Winston Churchill said, "We shape our buildings and thereafter they shape us." And so even subconsciously, it's going to shape the way we move physically, how we move through space. If you come home and there's not, a place for your keys and your jacket and your cell phone to go, then it's like, well, maybe I'm going to have to leave it on the chair and create clutter or make a feeling
Mm.
of chaos or there's not a place for things. Different little things that happen. They may not be big irritations, but it still shapes little things, and it sends you little feedback, to subconsciously, and it signals, is my life, is my best life, does life work for me? Does my home work for me? Do I have the possibility to stretch into my potential? Or am I feeling like I'm one arm behind my back and I'm not able to do the things that I love? Yeah.
Mm.
So look, perfection is hard to come by in the three-dimensional reality we live in, even when you build
I
a brand
know.
new home, right, from
Yeah.
scratch. So everyone, if they look around their life, they're going to see friction points and pain points.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. So I'm not here to, discourage anyone or make people hyper acutely aware of, of all the things and frustrations. It's just an understanding of how we can shift things in little ways, even little 2% shifts, because over time, if they add up, what if, every room in your home, was 2% better? And so cumulatively, every day you had, 8% better flow,
Mm,
or 8% less stress. What would that look like over years? How does that add up? That snowball effect or the butterfly effect.
yeah.
And so once we understand some things, and look, if it's something that you can't change, then don't, then just be forgiving of it and
Yeah.
yourself, and just say, you know what, I can't change that right now. And so it is what it is. What can I change? Where's the low-hanging fruit for me? And so that's what conscious home design is about. It's not an all or nothing proposition. It's just meeting you where you are and giving you a little bit of tools, a little bit of focus on, in the way you see things to say, okay, here's some gaps, here's what I can fix, here's what I can't. And so then you can, and it's like, I think of it as an essential life skill. It will serve you for all of your years. Anytime it's time to make a change in your living space, whether it's redecorating or even relocating, it will help you make choices that are, impactful and in alignment with the future you say you want to create.
Mm.
So that was a little bit of a roundabout um, you know, birds, sort of 10,000 foot view. I'm a bit of a storyteller, but your question was about the influencing, the environment and do you
Yeah.
notice it or not, and so, yeah.
You do.
Did I answer
Well,
good enough
maybe,
for you
maybe,
or
yeah,
you want
maybe
to
you
part two of
don't
that?
notice. No, I liked your
Yeah.
answer. I mean, it's maybe that you, I think that maybe we don't notice, well, what you said too with the brain, we don't notice everything. We're not created to notice everything, but it's when
Right.
we're able to bring awareness of, okay, is this working? And I really like that you use that reminder of it's small things. It doesn't always have to be, okay, we have to knock down an entire wall because this is
Right.
not
Sure.
working. It could be
Sure.
smaller things that really do make a huge difference. And even the 2% is the huge difference. Like it's, again, doesn't
It
have to
can
be
be,
this huge
absolutely.
thing, but it
Sure.
can be just this 2% difference. And if your day flows a little bit better, that totally makes sense to me, especially if you're kind of using that science too of just thinking is 20% of our energy. And then, walking an extra 10 feet to hang up your jacket in like the wrong direction. I don't know. I'm using like a silly example, but that really does affect your day. And we don't think
It
about
does. Every day it does. Yeah,
it. Yeah.
little things like that. Right.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I liked the example you also gave in the book. Hold on, I have a quote.
Okay.
Georgetown
Oh
University,
yeah.
a Georgetown University study found that student test scores increased by up to 11% by simply improving the physical environment. That's
Hmm.
wild. I wonder what they actually improved. Do you remember the study? I'm curious.
Yeah, it was lighting, amounts
Oh,
of things that were, distractions, like things
yeah.
to see, lighting and color. If
Okay.
everything is just a gray, bland environment, then it doesn't stimulate brain activity. Where if you have pops of color and things, there's a lot of
Fun.
work that's been done in architects that specifically work in educational settings now, where they're bringing in not just color, like your background is a beautiful warm peach color here, but in a school learning environment, if you had some contrasting colors, some stripes here and there, and some, it's just some confetti and some things and pops of color here and there. It creates visual interest and it keeps the brain more alert. And
Hmm.
so there's certain things that you can do that, the 11%, that's the difference between a B and an A plus.
That's
Right? I mean, that's
huge.
that's substantial, right? In terms
Yeah.
of what kind of college you might be eligible for.
Yeah.
Right. So
That's
yeah, it's
cool.
certainly, if things aren't working, it might not be your fault. It really could be that the architecture isn't supporting you as well as it could. And so, you know, look. people, I tell my clients, look, I don't want you worrying about all this stuff. That's my job. My job is to worry about this for you. You just live your life. Just tell me the life that you want to live. Tell me what's important to you. Tell me what your values are. Tell me the routine that you'd like to create for yourself. And then let me do the best I can with the resources you have, whatever space we're working with, whatever budget we're working with. And then we'll give you the very best that we can. And that's not like here it is and it's done. That's a collaborative process, but I'll present things and then we'll talk about it and then we make changes and go back and forth until we massage and evolve this plan into, as close to perfection as we can get. Perfection is hard, but excellence, we can get there. So yeah, so little things, right? So when I was writing the book, Conscious Home Design, I really knew I wasn't going to write like another style guide. There's plenty of talented designers out there who know how to put together a mood board and a collage of colors and textures and materials and make a really attractive looking space. But just because it's aesthetically appealing doesn't mean that it's actually going to help you, become, the best version of yourself, or grow into your potential and possibility. It may be fancy, it may be nice, and that may serve you at some level, because we want to have beautiful spaces. There is, the mind, just like the environment, test scores, they go up, they go down based on environment. And so if we can cultivate an aesthetical appeal to your space, that is going to serve you. But we can also go deeper than that, with the actual activities that you do. I wanted to write a book that was rooted in science and had universal principles, not just opinions. I like green. I like purple. Those are great. If you like purple, great. We're going to use that. If you like green, we're going to use that too, right? But before we start focusing on the finishes, and the textures that you're going to end up seeing at the end of the day, I want to make sure that the space actually flows and works for the activities you want to do. So to me, let's get the structure right first, and then hang the ornamentation that appeals to you on that, right? So that's the process. And I think a lot of people are just focusing on, the beautiful picture and they go, "Oh, I want that," and that's great, but it needs to be size appropriate. For the way you live. Like you could see this amazing outfit in the perfect color by a great designer, and you get it off the right. Oh, it's three sizes wrong.
Yeah.
It's like not going to serve you as well as if it actually fits you. You know what I mean? So architecture is the same way.
That's interesting that you said that because when I was thinking about small changes, that is what I thought about was like change, I don't know, wall color, change the mugs in your kitchen. And so, what would be small changes that are structural, not like wall structural, but
Hmm.
like functional?
Great. When I was researching the book, I was looking for scientific studies like the one at Georgetown.
Yeah.
And another one I came across that was really powerful. In fact, show-stopping for me. When I came across it, I said, wait, stop the press. This changes everything. And it was the Harvard study of adult happiness.
Mm.
And so this study, they started it in 1938, and it's still going on today. So it's like 88 years later. They've studied thousands of people through their whole lives, and they found that, we all have changes, health challenges, career changes, um, business success or failure, ups and downs of life. And all these things matter, but what matters the most? They found the single biggest predictor of people's happiness and their life expectancy. Statistically, how long people live comes down to the quality of their relationships.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my God, we all know that
Yeah.
intuitively. Of course, that's why I get out of bed in the morning, is for relationships. It's my reason for living, is for friends and family, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, that's why we do anything. It's like, what's the point if it's just, all by yourself, So, the relationships matter. And so I said, okay, well, the highest end and aim and goal of architecture is to help people live happily ever after. And here we now have data, big data from thousands of individuals over a whole lifetime showing that relationships is the true is the biggest predictor of happily ever after.
Mm,
How can I take that information and use it, intelligently? How can I actually support relationship harmony
mm,
in the home? What can I do? Even if someone's living alone,
mm.
how can I support that in their home? And so I had, relationship. That's just like a big word. What does that even mean? It's just like, best life. It's too broad. How do you target that with any
Yeah.
kind of success, right? With any kind of accuracy? You need to break it down. And so I went down this rabbit hole of what are relationships,
Mm.
which is a fun topic, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, love
So,
it.
because the Harvard study was very clear that relationship was not confined or limited to a romantic partnership.
Yeah.
Single people could still live a very long, happy life.
Yeah.
The relationship is the full bouquet of all the interactions we have. Even, the person down at the corner coffee shop, who maybe you don't even recognize their name, but you recognize their face, and that's a relationship. It's a small one, but it adds to that bouquet, that connection, feeling like you're, part of a community, part of the world. And it gives us, a sense of place and a sense of purpose a little bit to have that. So I started looking at relationships, and the Greeks have 7 different words for love,
I
depending on
love this topic. It's
yeah,
true. We don't have enough
yeah,
words for love
right. Depending on
in
if it's between,
English.
two best friends versus a parent and child versus some lovers versus a person in their community. I mean, there's so many different ways it shows up, right? Agape or eros or
Yeah.
filial or storge, et cetera, right? So that's fun, but obviously not enough. I had to keep going
Mhm.
in it down this exploratory path. Anyway, long story short, what I found is that all the myriad relationships that we have are going to fall into one of 3 sort of broad categories. And
Okay.
I classify them as giving, receiving, and reciprocal relationships.
Mm.
So, giving relationships. Examples of giving relationships are ones where we show up as the primary giver in the exchange. And so those are ones where with our people that we're coaching or mentoring or teaching, children that we may be raising, parenting,
Mhm.
babysitting, even plants and animals, whether it's a pet or, if you have a bird feeder outside, that's an example of a giving relationship that you've initiated. That means something.
Mhm.
And so giving relationships are powerful because they get us out of ourselves. If we're like in our own head too much, you can it's good for us to expand and get out of ourselves and extend because we all have an inherent need to give love just as
Yeah.
much as we have a need to receive love. It's really fundamental to the human experience and existence. We need to give love. And love shows up again, according to the Greeks, in many different ways. Love doesn't have to be a romantic love where I give you a kiss. Love can be sharing of a helping hand. Love can
Mhm.
be sharing of an idea or counsel, to others. Love shows up in many different ways, yeah. But we
Yeah.
have the need to give it and share it. So giving relationships open that door for us to develop that part of ourselves. Receiving relationships. They're the ones where we are the receiver, primary beneficiary of someone else's giving. So relationships that we have with our mentors and coaches, teachers, our elders and ancestors, even
Mhm.
our heroes or spiritual figures, that we're going to draw inspiration from or love or learn how to behave a little bit, and anyone who's going to encourage us to step into our possibility
Okay.
and reach our greater potential. That's
Yeah.
an example of a receiving relationship for us. And that's good, obviously, because when we consult with people who have gone before, when we consult with experts, we shortcut our path to success. We can learn from their mistakes. We can learn how to avoid the pitfalls and how to, and which apple is ripe and yummy and which one is sour and
Yeah.
not good to eat. We learn from people who have gone before. So obviously, we need those receiving relationships in our life to help our success. Less school of hard knocks, more learning from other
Mm.
people's
Yeah.
successes and failures. And then
Yeah.
our reciprocal relationships, like you and I have right now, where we have a discussion, there's a give and take. I'm not having to show up like a giving relationship where I have to have my best behavior, my role model face on, like if I was teaching a classroom full of children,
Yeah.
right? And I don't show up with the same level of sort of honoring, humility and respectful attention that you do to a mentor.
Yeah.
Our reciprocal relationships with our peers and friends and colleagues are ones where we can sort of let our hair down and just be more little more casual, speak from the heart, and just there's a give and take, and you can kind of just be yourself. And so there's a
Mm.
different quality of all these relationships. And what we know is that we want to have a balance of all three kinds. If you just have too much of one and not enough of the others, you can do that for a while. We're very adaptable and very resilient, but over time, we become lopsided. And
Mm.
so to be a well-rounded person, you want to have opportunities for all three kinds. And so as a designer, as an architect, I said, how can I support giving, receiving, and reciprocal relationships specifically in the home? Could every home have opportunity, not just for one or two, but
Mm.
all three kinds? And people think, well, the kitchen, that's where I prepare food for my family. That's probably a giving relationship space.
Yeah.
Oh, well, then there's the family room. That's where we're telling stories and hanging out with each other. That's probably a reciprocal space. And
Mm.
so that's true. Certain spaces do lend themselves more, to certain types of the relationships. But I wanted to challenge myself and say, can we create opportunity not just for all three kinds of relationship in the home, but what would happen? Is it even possible to have all three kinds of relationship, a giving, a receiving, and a reciprocal relationship opportunity in every room of the house?
Oh,
And so I
yeah.
said, wow, that's fun. What would that do for people's lives? We're talking about the 2% shifts, right? We're talking about this
Yeah.
butterfly effect. What if we do that? What if we open doors of people's sense of connection or possibility for relationships, for experiencing them, their full range of giving and receiving love and connection on a daily basis in
Mm.
their home. And so this is really where the rubber meets the road. Conscious home design is this big, beautiful idea, but what does it actually look like? And so
Yeah.
this is a powerful way. And the really good news, Hannah, is that the relationships is the single biggest predictor of our happiness and success and life expectancy statistically. And it's also accessible. Even if you're just living in a rental apartment,
Mm.
there are things that we can do to enhance our relationship opportunities right then and there. And so, you don't have to, hire an architect or tear down walls like you were saying before. Sure. Look, if you have the ability to build a new home and you come to me, then that is a quantum leap in being able to
Yeah.
take charge of your future and create your destiny, right? But those little shifts still over time compound and can help us also create our destiny just in incremental steps. And anyone who does knows about investing, the difference between a 5% rate of return and a 7% rate of return on your retirement account over years, it will double your outcome.
Yeah.
Just 2%, the 2% shift
Yeah.
can double your results. And so that's what we're talking about in your life. Let's make that 2% shift to double your results in in your relationship, in your quality of life.
Mm.
So I said, all right, let's think about it. What's the hardest room in the house to have relationships? It's not even, we don't even think about having relationships in this room, and that's the bathroom.
Yeah.
The bathroom is a private space, right? It's where we go to
Yeah.
do our business, shut the door, be alone. um, take care of the body, but also, if you just, you're at Thanksgiving and someone brings someone over, and next thing you know, they're talking about politics or some nonsense. And it's like, oh my God, I just need to excuse myself to the bathroom for a minute.
Yes.
We're trying
Love
to have a
that.
meal here, not a war.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, just example, the bathroom can be a refuge, it can
Yeah.
be an energetic refuge just as much as a physical, refresh and refuge, which is absolutely true. What's also true is that I have found it is one of the most rich environments to cultivate your sense of connection to
Hmm.
the world. And so let's look at actual examples. Or if you, sorry, I've been talking a lot. If you have comments, I don't want to keep on going forever.
No,
Let's
I want the
pause here.
examples. This is a
If,
cliffhanger. Don't leave us on a cliffhanger. I have ideas, but I'm curious like
sure.
how you can
Okay,
cultivate reciprocal
great.
relationships in or receiving
Yeah.
relationships in the bathroom.
Uh-huh. Great. All right. Let's start with the giving relationships in the bathroom.
Okay.
A lot of bathrooms have windows, not all, but ones that do. How about getting a plant in there?
Mm,
Or two, put it on the windowsill, or if the sill's not big enough, get a little plant stand or a shelf that you can do,
yeah.
or hang it from the top, right? There's, it's look, there's data. It's not just a giving relationship, and this is low maintenance too. I mean, once or twice a week, take 3 steps from the sink over to the plant and give it some
Hmm.
some water,
Yeah.
maybe prune off a dead leaf. It's pretty easy to maintain that. It's not a uh, high maintenance
Yeah,
relationship. But
true.
there's data that actually, so look, here's the thing, Hannah, our bodies didn't evolve in buildings and boxes, right?
Right.
We evolved in nature. No matter how beautiful your home is, from the perspective of the human body,
Wow.
it is still a foreign environment.
Wow.
And so you can show 1,000 people, a random sampling of humans from all around the planet, different ages, demographics, cultures, etc., and show them an image of, some of the finest architecture mankind has come up with. And everyone could look at that and say, that's great architecture. Maybe it's not my style or my taste, but I can certainly appreciate it for the beauty it is, right? However, if you put, physiological sensors on people, they will not all respond the same to
Mm,
seeing that architecture. However, if you show those same 1,000 people a nature scene
mm,
of green growing things,
hmm.
they may say, "Oh, I prefer mountains. Oh, I prefer a beach. Oh, I prefer," they may have different preferences, just like with the
Hmm.
architecture. The fact remains, all of them, provided they're normal, healthy, people, will show a calming of the brain waves, the reduced spikes of the alpha waves. They'll show
Wow.
a slowing of the heart rate, which can reduce blood pressure. They'll show the breath being less shallow and more deep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this physiological response is triggered by seeing green growing things because it's your body knows, hey, I'm
Wow.
in my natural habitat. I'm
Mm,
I'm where I belong. And so, you settle into the parasympathetic nervous system.
yeah.
And so bringing plants into the home helped you trigger that, whether you're aware of it or not. You talked about this
Yeah.
earlier about can it influence you even when you're not paying attention? Absolutely. Bring the plants in. It really makes a difference. And it's proven scientific, right? It's just it obviously I just explained it, but if you want to, research and find
Could do
find some
more
data on
research.
it, it's
Yeah.
there. Yeah. So look, put some plants in there. If you don't have a window, you can put in a full spectrum light bulb. There are plenty of plants that will grow just fine with a full spectrum bulb. Not one of those daylight bulbs, there's those too glaring, but one that specifically says full spectrum.
Okay.
And that can, that's an opportunity.
Mm.
Going one step further, what about putting a fishbowl in your bathroom? Yeah,
Cute. Oh
a
my
little
gosh, should I
goldfish.
do that? That's
or
a
a beta
great
fish.
idea.
It's like now you come in, now it's if you transform this place that's a dead utility space into like a little bit of an oasis. Now it's alive. There's a spark of joy. Hi, fish. You come in the
That's
morning, you
so
sprinkle a little
fun.
food on there.
Oh,
Again, it's low maintenance. It just takes a little spot. Look, everyone has to choose their own adventure. If this appeals to you, why not? But, I'm just showing examples. These are
I might do that,
possibilities.
Taylor. I'm gonna email you if I decide to put a fish tank in my bathroom, but that's so
Put a
fun.
picture on Pinterest and tag
I
me.
will.
Absolutely. Or not Pinterest,
Instagram.
Instagram.
That's so cute. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are a couple examples of giving relationships in the bathroom that really, again, 2% shifts, right?
Yeah.
So reciprocal relationships. I think we see this a lot in master bathrooms where there's two sinks, side by side. You can brush your
Yep.
teeth with the double bowl sink. Um, if you have space for it, why not put a big tub, a big bathtub that where you can soak in. It's very relaxing, and if it's big enough for two, that can be quite romantic and engaging. Yes. Um, a lot of people, if they have again, if they have the space and they're shaping their, a nice master bath, will create a shower room that's big enough for two with two different heads on it. And so that's not necessarily, sexy time. That's just functional time rather than having to
Yeah.
plan your bathroom schedules around each other and take turns. Now you can do it simultaneously. And even if you're not talking to each other, there's a lot of data around couples that have morning routines that are, they may not be interactive, but they're, together, they're in proximity with one another, and
Yeah.
it can create a real sense of stability and
Oh,
harmony and security, in emotionally and mentally, in couples. And
yeah.
so, again, everyone has to feel into what is going to be right for them and the relationship that they have and that they want to create. But those are examples of reciprocal opportunities in a bathroom. Receiving relationships. All right. How about taking an image of someone that inspires you, or someone that loves you, and getting them up there? Maybe you're brushing your teeth, you're washing your face at the sink, whether it's in the morning preparing for the day or whether it's at the end of the day, sort of unwinding. Just take, 5 seconds and look at that image or yeah, and just remember that feeling. What does it feel like to have that encouragement of someone saying, I want the best for you, you know,
Mm.
or I love you, I care about you. Something is just as simple but as powerful as that, And remembering that feeling, that's the alchemy. It's like this person could be long gone. They could be on the other side of the planet. They could have passed away. But you can
Mm.
still remember what it feels like to have that right now in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had someone tell me, I don't want to picture a granny staring at me in the bathroom, and that feels too weird or creepy. And I was
Taking a
like, I get
poo.
it. No problem. Don't do that. Someone else was like, well, what if I'm Jewish and my partner is Catholic and we both can't agree to have a picture of Jesus in the bathroom? I'm
Oh.
like, yeah, I get it. No problem. Hey, find something that works for you. If that's too prominent, a picture of grandma, or a picture of a spiritual figure is too, in your face kind of a thing. Something that's very subtle. Take a quote that
That's
inspires
what I
you.
was gonna ask.
A
Yeah.
line from a letter that someone wrote to you that really touched your heart, put that up there. And then it's very subtle. And then you just, while you're doing your routine, just take a glance at that and almost like an affirmation, just go over the
Wow.
words, once or twice and feel what it evokes in you, or what
Mm.
it feeds you. So these are examples of receiving relationships that we can, put into the bathroom. It costs nothing, right? It's
Yeah.
so easy. You can do this today. And how does that change how you feel in your body, how you stand on your own 2 feet, how you show up every day? What ripple effects is that going to send out that are also then how going to come back to you, you
Yeah.
know? So it's really powerful.
I
And
love
this
that.
is conscious home design.
That's so fun. And I if we had 3 more hours, I would love to go through
Oh
like
yeah, we're
every
just
single
scratching the
room.
surface here. Yeah.
Because yeah, and obviously, I mean, this is the point of your book and your workbook, but I really love exploring and even just that thought of like, can I explore how can I add receiving reciprocal and giving into my kitchen right now or into my
Sure.
dining room. Like that, I'm gonna go through my house now and think about that. But that was really fun to go through the bathroom because that was definitely where my mind went with that was probably the most um complicated one, I guess, but I mean it's
Yeah.
not even that
Mhm.
complicated, but when you think about it. But I really
Mhm.
like that. Thank you for all of those examples. That was really cool. And I love your
You're
workbook. I
welcome.
want to give you a second to talk about it just because I was going through it. And so as we wrap up, um I mean, what is the workbook? What you
Yeah.
spoke a little bit about the book, but what is the workbook? What's the point of it? And let's go there for a
Thanks,
minute.
Hannah, for
Yeah.
opening that up. The book is the big idea. I hit all of the main key data points. That these are the things that move the needle, universally in humans, helping people master the mind-body environment connection.
Yeah.
The workbook is actually about asking those good questions. So
Mhm.
taking those concepts and seeing what would that look like for you? How does that show up, in your life
Yeah.
currently versus, what it could in the future if you're trying to create that. And so it's about fun, exploratory, exercises and visions and maybe write something out and just discover that for yourself. And so the workbook is about creating sort of the ultimate wish list for your home. Things that, go, this, like we talked about, the beauty and the style, it matters because, you touch it every day, but it is skin deep. And so we also want to make sure that we're focusing on the things that really make a difference for us because people are like icebergs, right? Like only 10% is what you see. And that's, the clothes you wear, and the car you drive and the home you live in and stuff. But the things that make you you are your spirit, and your deeper personality traits and quirks and your values. And that's all the stuff that's underneath. And so if your home is just the 10% surface stuff, hey, bedroom, bathroom, sleeping, eating, bathing, hangout space, the basic function, that's just the 10%. That's just keeping you alive. But that's not who you really are. So let's focus on the things that are going to reflect who you are more deeply. And so that's what the workbook is about. It's about getting at those core values, those core issues, and saying, what would a home based on that look like for me? What
Mm.
would that experience be like? So that's what the workbook is.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing, and what a fun thing to explore. I was thinking about it when I've talked to other interior designers, and I don't know that I've had
Uh-huh.
multiple conversations with architects, but it's always kind of like looking at mood boards, like you said, like
Sure.
what interests you, what looks really good, and there's a lot of benefit to that, of
It's important.
course.
Yeah.
But I worked with a personal stylist one time, and she had certain a similar approach to you as of like what are you wanting to convey with the clothes that you wear. It's not just what looks good to you, and that we did talk about, of course, but what are you really wanting to convey. I actually also had
Hmm.
someone, Paul Fishman, if you want to go listen to another podcast after this one, go listen to that one because he's a personal stylist too, and we talked about yeah, what energy, like dressing for the energy that you want to convey for that day. And you're going to dress different for a business meeting when you're wanting to be like in charge and powerful versus a romantic evening with your partner, and really paying attention to not only those big examples but every single day, how do you want to dress. That kind of was a connection that I made too, of your home too, and like what is the energy that you want to feel. And
Hmm.
really we have to ask those questions of ourselves. It's not just what looks good to you, it's diving deep into those questions that you have in the workbook, which is a really fun approach that I haven't really heard in architecture before.
Everyone has a wish list. Like if I said, if Hannah, you and I were going to work together on creating your dream home, you are going to have your list. You're going to come to me with the things you want.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, okay, this is probably 90% true. I'm going to take you at face value. Yeah, she says she wants this. I believe her. She knows who she is. She's got these things. Maybe a couple of things she's asking for, maybe she thinks that means, maybe she thinks that this is a solution to a certain problem, but if I ask a good question, there may be a better solution, so there may be, that's why I say 90%. There may be, you know, design is a solution to a problem. Hey, I'm getting wet. Okay, you need a roof, so that's a
Yeah.
solution, right? So I think of it in terms of those. And so when someone says, I want this X, Y, or Z, or I want a window here, or I want a closet, that's a solution to I want light, or I want air, or I want a view, or I want storage, so I say, okay, what do you want? You want a window. Is it that you want light? Is it that you want air? Is it that you want a view? Tell me
Wow.
deeper. What do you want so that I can help you? Oh, you want a view? Oh, well, here's another. This room doesn't even have to go here. The best view is over here. We could put that room over there. So you could really, if view is what's important to you for this particular activity space, let's get that over here. And so then you can start drilling down into getting a better layout, not just enough bedrooms, not just enough square footage, but well aligned and well placed, rooms in the home.
Mm,
So that's the essence of it is really helping people come up with their wish list.
mm,
There's things that people may have forgotten to ask or didn't even know they were supposed to ask because it's esoteric. People don't build homes every day. They may have never done this before.
yeah.
And going back to Seth Godin, I've spent tens of thousands of hours in my profession. There are questions that I know to ask that you might have forgotten. So when you come to me with your list, your wish list, I'm like, this is great. Here's where we're going to start. And I'm going to look for the gaps. I'm going to say, what did she forget to ask? And then I'll ask you
Mm,
questions that will get a response. And I can fill that in. It's like, okay, now we've got your ultimate wish list.
mm,
And so my goal is for you to say, I have a vision for my dream home, and I came to work with Taylor to help me, build my vision.
yeah.
And after working with Taylor, what we came up with is even better than I imagined.
Wow.
That's success in my book. That's how I define success in my practice for people. So
Mm,
whether someone's building a brand new home or renovating an existing one, or even just wants a consultation, like a pick my brain about what do I do with the space I've got right now, I work on projects all over the country. And so people can, if you don't mind me sharing, people can visit my website, conscioushomedesign.com, and they can book an appointment with me to strategize, talk about what they want. It's also where you can buy a copy of the workbook. It's available as a physical copy. I'll sign it and mail it to you. Or if you want, you can just get it as an instant PDF digital download as well. So conscioushomedesign.com. Thank
you
you.
stole my last question, so that was definitely where can people find you and learn.
Oh, sorry, I just rolled
No,
right
so
into it. It
thank
seemed
you.
natural. So,
You did. You're doing all
because
the
you
right
asked me about the
segues.
workbook, so that was
Yeah, no, thank you. Okay, so last question.
yeah,
If the world could only remember one feeling from your work, what would that feeling be?
possibility.
Ooh, I love
You
that.
know, that you're standing on a mountaintop, on not necessarily a mountaintop, but a vista, and you're looking out over the whole, surveying the kingdom. It's like where do I want to go? It's like you've got choices.
Hmm. I do feel that from just this conversation. I'm like, now I just want to get
Because
back
it's
home.
true.
Yeah, and I want to go in every room in my apartment and look at where the relationships are giving and receiving and reciprocal and how I can
Oh,
add more. Like what is not
yes.
working in my space right now that I've stopped paying attention to. So really, yeah,
Yes,
really,
sure.
really fun conversation. This is probably one of
Sure.
my favorite conversations I've had, Taylor. So thank you for
Thank you.
coming on the podcast. Thank you for all of
Thanks for
your
that feedback.
wisdom and expertise. And it was lovely to have this
You're
conversation with
welcome.
you.
That is the one takeaway is now that you know those relationships are the big thing, you can go through every room in the house
Yeah.
and look, where am I being supported? Where can I do that? And so you've got a copy of the workbook.
Hmm.
Have fun.
Thank you. Gosh. Yeah, I need it. Now I need to go through. I read the book, but now I need to go through the whole workbook
Yeah.
and find all the possibilities. I appreciate you. This is so fun.
Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you so much for being here. Truly, your support and love is the foundation of this community and this podcast. If you find yourself in a season of life ready to explore your inner landscape deeper, or perhaps you feel like you've tried all the things and nothing has worked, here's your gentle invitation to come back home. Align and Embody is my signature coaching container that is created to explore our soma, our living wholeness. Perhaps the answers you seek truly do live within. You just need to learn the communication of your body. Align and Embody combines the 3 pillars of my business: human design, somatic breathwork, and cycle alignment. Head to the link in this description to learn more, or better yet, reach out on Instagram @_journey-to-well. I'd be honored to connect with you. Be well on this journey, my friend. Talk soon.